Welcome everyone. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about the latest updates from Clever and how we supported you and your districts during a back to school that kind of feels like it's still going on. We're also very excited to announce our newest API version 3, and share more details about the features that are going to be a part of that. Before we get into the meat of the thing, I want to share just a couple of housekeeping answers. I know there was one question in here about it being recorded, so I just wanted to make sure you know this as well. As we're going through the presentation, please feel free to use the Zoom console throughout to ask questions so that we can bring those together and prioritize them towards the end in our Q&A. Our team are going to be pulling any questions that come into the chat. And we're going to have some time at the end to make sure we get to as many of your questions as we can. Also, the session will be recorded and then it's then going to be shared out afterwards. So no need to be hurriedly trying to take screenshots of everything. It's going to be shared after the fact. In terms of introductions, it's going to be the two of us today. My name is Steve Leiden. I have been on the Partner Success Management team for the last 2 years. And then we'll also be joined by Emily.
Hi, everyone. This is Emily. I'm the product manager for our Secure Sync product, which covers rostering and our API and a bunch of other things. Excited to be here to share where we're going with API v3.
Fantastic. And I know I said welcome before, but welcome back again. It is great to see quite a few repeat attendees from our last 3 quarterly product talks that we've hosted this year so far. This webinar is our 4th in this new series of quarterly product talks, where we've been sharing the latest developments with Clever and our product roadmap. We know how incredibly important it is for our partners to know about what changes are coming in advance of your district customers. And we hope that these talks provide you with helpful updates so that you feel set up for success when working with districts. This is our last one for 2020, but we'll be continuing these into next year. And as always, welcome all of your feedback on what additional information we could be sharing in talks just like these. When we've approached this year's back to school, we knew, as we all did, that it was going to be quite a bit different from in the past. But who knew quite how different it would be? We made essential updates to our platform to meet the unique challenges for this back to school and to ensure learning can happen from anywhere. Whether learning takes place in the classroom, remotely, or a combination of both, we wanted to ensure that our partners and school districts are all ready with Clever. So it has been an incredibly challenging back to school, literally for every audience that we've spoken to, whether it's our partners, our districts, the teachers and the students in the schools. So we knew it was more important than ever before to deliver on a few key areas. Starting with our platform resilience and ensuring the resilience of the platform. We expected more engagement on Clever than ever before. So a big focus was on ensuring platform resilience and making sure that everyone could log in and that things would work as expected. Of course, delivering world-class customer support is something that we put a stake in the ground on. And just like you, our support volume spiked during school closures. And we saw that continues to increase and continues to increase all throughout back to school. But we put all possible resources toward meeting our SLAs and delivering a best-in-class experience for you and for district and district customers. Smarter data sharing has been a major area of feedback that we have consistently heard from all of our partners throughout the years. The wish, of course, is to help the districts make sure that they share data correctly the first time. This year, we rolled out smarter data sharing to let your teams make recommendations on sharing rules and hopefully avoid some of the more complicated troubleshootings. Streamlining experience for connecting new districts and applications And allowing for custom onboarding steps has definitely increased our focus on supporting your growth. And by your growth, I mean you individually, your growth at scale. And finally, one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that we were activating users and driving engagement and training with teachers, students, and we'll get into this more later, but the entire learning ecosystem. We know that this has been an extended and challenging back to school, and we want to thank you for putting your trust in Clever to support you and your districts. Despite having a record year for growth, we are excited to report on a couple of key metrics coming out of back to school. I'm sure this lines up pretty well with all of you, but we saw a 47% increase in total ticket volume year over year during back to school. But one thing is that tickets related to data sharing issues specifically actually decreased by 6% compared to before. We think that's a great indicator that investments in improved sharing are helping to streamline the onboarding process for many of you, and we hope to keep increasing that year over year. For districts and teachers who reached out to Clever about application-specific issues, we saw a 97.6% customer satisfaction rate. For context, most of those app-related issues are looping in Clever to help with sharing permissions and questions around those, or investigating data validation issues that appear within Clever. And finally, we held steady at our 99.9% uptime during the busiest back-to-school season ever, which we're really proud of. I had mentioned the growth that we had seen and the growth throughout the year. We saw very significant growth trends in other ways, not just in support tickets. This year, we saw over 2 times more new district connections on Clever. Fueling those connections, we onboarded over 10,000 new schools during back to school. And with so many new and returning users on Clever, it really was more important than ever to support streamlined onboarding, scaled activation, and training for district administrators, teachers, and staff. With that in mind, especially around training, another huge focus was providing districts, teachers, and staff with a scalable training and enablement resources to confidently manage digital learning success and drive engagement with each of your applications. During the back to school period, we delivered new content on the Clever Academy with more quick start videos added and easy to digest self-paced lessons for everyone using Clever to be able to take. We also rolled out a brand new training program, a trainer program, to equip teachers and staff with resources to train other teachers on how to manage their Clever portal and access your applications through Clever. As a reminder, the Clever Academy courses are also available for all of our application partners to use as a resource to be able to share with your districts, but also to be able to take yourself as well. We've heard from a lot of you that when you are onboarding a new school, you'll often spend some of your time on that first week just retraining folks on how exactly to access your app through Clever. So I would highly recommend pointing your district customers in the direction of the Clever Academy if they're looking for maybe just a refresher, or just to check out the courses yourselves if you're really interested in learning more about what the district administrator experience is like in the Clever platform. Another one of our biggest pushes this year was to create an ecosystem that supports an entire learning community, the entire learning community, and helps drive success with digital learning. Earlier this year, we introduced a family portal for parents and guardians, along with new tools for school leaders and for tech coaches at districts. It's still early, but we've already seen strong adoption with our family portal, which powered over 600,000 student logins and is primarily being used by families to help students access apps and resources through Clever. We're excited to continue building on this functionality. And I'll plug just a little reminder here that if you want to add resources for your application to be visible in the family portal, please let your success manager know, or contact Clever support directly. We've had over 23,000 active school tech leads across a third of Clever schools use these new tools to help with training teachers, troubleshoot login issues, and managing their EdTech analytics. This is a staff user role is for folks such as principals, tech coaches, or curriculum specialists who play an important role in supporting student learning and the teachers' adoptions of EdTech. So that was a look back at this back to school and some of the features and programs that we rolled out so far this year and in the lead up to that. But as we look at our roadmap from this year, there's like one trend that is very, very consistent. Digital learning adoption has accelerated during the pandemic, and it's changing the way educational software is used. That's why today we're really excited to announce updates to our roadmap that will meet the fast evolving and unique needs for both districts and for partners, and simplify digital learning for everyone is the aim. So what we've continued to hear from both our partners and from districts can be summarized, we think, into two main themes. It's supporting evolving needs and promoting flexibility. As schools have transitioned to online learning, teachers' needs have evolved significantly. They've told us that they need the ability to easily direct students to their digital curriculum content, and as well to track student engagement. Many application partners have been experiencing rapid and continually accelerating growth. And while districts get creative with how they implement digital learning, what you guys have told us you need is flexible data that makes it easy to support each district's unique setup and their needs at scale. As we look at the 2020 product roadmap, here, many of the features we released for back to school in 2020 delivered tools to support the evolving needs of districts and educators, enabling faster, easier onboarding with streamlined workflows. We're now thrilled to announce that version 3 of Clever's API will be available in December 2020. We're looking forward to delivering the next generation of a new flexible data model for all of our partners. This is our biggest release since API version 2, which came out in 2017. And we're excited about how this new data model will transform customer experiences for everyone involved, both application partners as well as districts. I'm now going to hand it over to Emily to share more details on the new features in API version 3.
Thanks, Steve. If any of you have worked with me before when I was on our partner engineering team, you'll know that I am deeply passionate about our API, and I'm excited to bring you the details of our biggest API version ever, which is, of course, version 3.0. And as Steve mentioned, V3 will be available this December. With this new API version, partners can better support each district's unique setup while districts benefit from consistent role-based permissions across their apps. Let's take a look at these new features. First, our data model will support multi-role users. You can think of this as one Clever ID for all users. We've heard a lot of feedback from partners about this, so I'll go into the details of this in just a little bit. Second, as connecting and engaging with families is more important than ever, we're adding additional granularity to contact relationships. This means that if a contact is a parent to 2 children, also has a nephew in the district, and is an emergency contact for a family friend, they'll have one Clever ID, and you'll be able to see those unique relationships with every single student and easily, set the right permissions for family members who support student learning in your application. Finally, one major point of confusion has been that our endpoints refer to a user type called school admins. Over time, districts have used this role type to essentially sync any staff member who needs access via Clever, and not just those who need admin privileges. And that's why we are renaming this role to staff in our API, which matches how districts currently refer to this role type. Additionally, we'll tell you exactly which role each staff member has in Clever, so you can make sure you're assigning the right permissions as well. Lastly, I do want to highlight that these are the key features of API v3, but not the only ones that we'll be releasing. A full list of feature updates will be released alongside our developer documentation. And with that said, let's dive into supporting multi-role users, since this is a major change to the way that Clever works. So let's talk about what multi-role users look like today. This is our current data model as of API v2. In a district, we might have someone like Steve. Steve is both a teacher and an instructional coach for his school, which means that in Clever, he has two roles, teacher and school admin, or staff, as I mentioned just a minute ago. In practice, this means that Steve actually has two accounts in Clever, a teacher account and a staff account, each with a distinct Clever ID. The data is completely separate between these two records, and Steve needs to log out of his teacher account in Clever to log in to another application as, his staff record. And many of our partners have run into this case and come up with really creative solutions to ensure that Steve has the right access, that he should be having in your applications. So now that we've defined the existing problem, let's jump forward to how we support multi-role users in v3. Here's our new data model. Now there will be a user record for all humans synced to Clever. Taking a look at Steve again, he's still a teacher and a staff member, but now he has a single user record and one Clever ID. In the API, you'll still be able to see all of Steve's data for both of his roles, as well as related data like the classes he teaches. As I'm sure you can guess, I'm extremely excited to be updating our data model. This change will streamline provisioning all users via Clever and avoid needing to create duplicate accounts or support complex merging of Clever records. We firmly believe that this user-centric data model is the future of Clever, and with that in mind, I'd like to introduce our updated API versioning policy. First and foremost, we've heard a lot of confusion around when or whether Clever will release an API version. Moving forward, we're committing to releasing planned API versions no more than once a year and announcing new API versions by November with plans for a December release. We hope this will give you enough time to plan for any integration updates you might want to make before the following back to school. Additionally, since we started versioning our API, we've allowed partners to make calls against any major or minor version. And we're finding that this makes setting district expectations and troubleshooting potential issues together more difficult, as features vary widely between API versions. So moving forward, we're allowing only one major version in production. That means if you're using version 3, you can make calls to v3.0 and any future minor versions, but not v2. This will also allow us to declutter your dashboard by removing references to old data types. Finally, to ensure a great experience for application partners and districts, and with industry best practices in mind, Clever will now only support two major API versions at a time. So this means API version 1, which was introduced in 2012. With the release of API v3, we'll start the deprecation process with a plan to be fully deprecated by December 2022. Our partner engineering team is ready to help with upgrade plans for those moving to v3, and will especially be proactively reaching out to partners who are using v1. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Steve to share more about how we'll be supporting partners with an upgrade plan. And just as a quick reminder, please add any questions to the Zoom Q&A console about these new features so we can make sure to cover them during the Q&A portion.
Thank you, Emily. First off, thank you for telling us all about API version 3. I still can't believe that API version 1 will have made it a full 10 years before it's gone, but we're going to get there eventually. And also, yeah, another plug for questions and answers. Make sure you keep those coming into the Q&A panel in Zoom so that we can make sure to get to as many of your questions as we can toward the end of the webinar. Okay, so as Emily mentioned, our partner engineering team is ready to help with your upgrade strategy. We know that depending on your current integration setup, this scope of work may include unique requirements to your application, which is why we want to give you as much time as possible to dedicate to developer resources into supporting this important upgrade. We encourage you to schedule time to meet with Clever's partner engineering team to identify scope of work so that once the dev docs are available in December, your teams are going to have good visibility into the work required and can factor that into your product team's roadmap as needs be. With all of this proactive planning, we are really hoping to support you all in upgrading before back to school 2021. And we'll also, of course, have some more resources to support you in this upgrade. Next week, we'll be sharing more materials with you and your team out in public, a blog post that talks about the features in the new API data model so that you can share that with leadership as well as other internal teams. Clever's API policy will also be published and a version comparison to help fully and better understand how the new features in API version 3 are going to differ from past versions of the API. And then in November, moving forward, we'll host a technical webinar that provides more details on the API requirements. We definitely encourage you to invite your developer leads or whoever is going to be working to support those upgrade plans to that webinar. Lastly, as we mentioned before, the dev docs for API version 3 will be available in December and serve as your technical guide on how to upgrade your existing integrations. So that covers like what's coming in 2020. But on these talks, we like to give you a little bit of a look ahead. So let's look ahead a little bit to 2021, where we're focused on supporting districts and partners' evolving needs, as we called out earlier. We've heard from our districts that they need a way to centralize their online learning. So we're working to provide new classroom tools to simplify instruction and increase student engagement in your learning applications as well as their curriculum. During the back to school this year, we rolled out our family portal, messaging, and then classroom and ed tech analytics to foster engagement at school and at home. And in early 2021, we're going to launch attendance, agendas, and assignments that are going to guide students directly to your applications for their learning. We're excited to share this very early look at our 2021 roadmap with you, and we look forward to actually partnering with you all on how these features can solve the needs that you're hearing from districts. I'm sure many of you are going to have questions about these exciting new features, but we're still working on finalizing details, but we're doing them with the intention to build products that are going to be as useful as possible for you and that you're going to love. We're going to be connecting with you to hear your feedback and provide updates over the coming months, but this is just a quick look to the future. And with that, I'm actually going to wrap up a little bit here with a reminder that it is always our goal to ensure that you are as informed as possible about product updates and changes so that you're set up for success and know exactly how best to support your districts with Clever. As I mentioned at the beginning, this webinar is going to wrap up the fourth of our quarterly product webinars for 2020. We will continue hosting these into 2021, but if you have questions about 2020, right now is one of your best chances to get into the Q&A, put in some questions there because we're going to move into the Q&A in a moment. So make sure anything that you've been saving till now, you get into the Zoom console. We're also going to continue sharing regular updates via our monthly partner newsletters, as well as in-product pop-ups. If you're not receiving those monthly newsletters, please reach out either to your success manager or to Clever support to make sure that we can get you added to receive those messages in the future. And with that, we're going to take a look at some questions. Hopefully, we're going to have time to get through most of what is coming up. But if we don't get to a specific question, they are absolutely tied to your names. And as you're registered for this webinar, we'll be able to follow up with you directly to make sure that every question that is asked will be able to be gone through. So I'm going to open up my list of questions here and ask Emily to be able to jump off mute and help me answer some of these as I read them out. So let's dive into the first one. Yeah, when will the new API dev docs be available? Just quick answer on here. Definitely by December, but there are no specific dates just yet. Traditionally, we've released our documentation as the API version is released and as we try to add in as many features as we can right up to that point. So since this is a very major API version change, the biggest one we've ever done, we're working really hard just to make sure that you can get documentation, that the documentation gets released as quickly as possible. But yeah, it definitely in December. from another question, what endpoint will these users be available on if they have multiple roles assigned in Clever but one Clever ID? Emily?
Yeah, all users will be at the /users endpoint. There isn't a separate endpoint for, some users who have, one role or some that have multiple. So everything on the user's endpoint.
Great. I got another one for you, Emily. How is this different? I know you went a little bit into this, but how is this different from how Clever has handled student contact relationships previously?
Yeah, great question. In previous versions, you'd either have one contact per student or one contact with the same relationship for multiple connected students. And so we are consolidating these, but also keeping the relationships distinct for each student.
Great. And I actually spotted this one show up in the chat while I was talking. I shouldn't have had the chat open. I should have just been concentrating, but I couldn't help myself. What is a school tech lead and how is that different from regular staff? The school tech lead user is a staff role within Clever that has additional permissions to support training and troubleshooting for districts. Other staff members might only need to have access to the Clever portal for specific applications, but the school tech lead is something defined by the district and given some extra permissions around training and troubleshooting. So that's who a school tech lead is.
Awesome. I'm going to jump in with a couple more questions here.
Oh, awesome.
We have a question from Jerome about how Clever will format race values in the newest version of the API. Our team will follow up with you directly, but this sounds like a technical issue that we can dig into with you. So we'll be reaching out over email. Steve, I think I have a great question for you from Lizzie. Can you tell me more about which Clever users are being referred to? Are those app partners or district partners?
That's a great question. Lizzie, I believe this question was around the Clever Academy. Right now, there are courses and trainings for teachers and district administrators at the districts in the Clever Academy. Our application partners, all of you guys can access those exact courses to either better understand the district administrator experience, and we've heard it's actually also been really helpful, especially for support and implementation teams to get at application partners to have visibility or training on what the districts see as well. So it's when I say to users, I definitely mean those at the district and teachers and district administrators, but it's available to everybody around. Looks like there is another one from Lizzie here as well, which is who are Clever champions and certified trainers, and how do we join any of the 3 initiatives that we were talking about there when we were talking about the Clever Academy? So Clever champions and certified trainers are Clever Academy members who have completed our entire set of training courses. If you're interested in joining, you can check out clever.com/academy and be able to log in as application partners there. The next one, I think we're gonna toss this one over to you, Emily. From Karen, what do you advise when districts use both Clever and Google Classroom?
Ooh, very interesting question. So if districts use Google as an identity provider, they can set up an SSO experience with Google Classroom for their users by using our external links feature. Clever also has a saved passwords application that securely stores credentials for users and pre-populates those credentials for users. So essentially providing a different SSO experience, but still SSO. If you're running into cases where these are coming up and you need assistance in setting these up or talking to districts about them, you can have them reach out to Clever support.
Great. Another one for you, Emily. How long are the version 2 APIs going to be available for?
Yeah, right now we don't have plans to deprecate version 2 of our API. It is one of the 2 major versions that we're going to be supporting moving forward as we release API v3. If we plan on deprecating it in the future, perhaps with the release of a v4, you'll definitely have at least 1 year's notice before we do so. Version 1 is the first version we're deprecating, which is again in December 2022.
Great. And then another one for you, Emily. I just keep peppering them towards you. Regarding supporting multi-user roles, will email addresses be unique across Clever with API 3? For example, a little extra context, an email address can only have one Clever ID associated with it.
Sure. The answer is mostly. Currently, the number one case where there are duplicate email addresses in Clever are cases where the same person has multiple roles. So in this case, as we are supporting multi-role users, those would all connect to the same user within Clever. I say mostly and not entirely because there's still a couple edge cases related to email uniqueness, mostly around things like student contacts, but we're looking into the best way to ensure email address uniqueness across all Clever users. Steve, I think I have one for you. Should the district and vendor partner be on the same API version? So for example, would a district be on version 3 and a vendor be using version 2.0 to support the district?
That is an excellent question. And just to kind of clarify here, districts upload data to Clever and then make it available to our application partners via the APIs that we're talking about here. Our application partners integrate directly with Clever's API, which means that while our app partners build to a specific API, it's actually not something that most districts do. Sorry, it's not something that any districts do or that most would be familiar with. So specifically around this one, it really shouldn't matter for the most part on whether like a district won't be on a particular version of the API. It's going to be on the application side, whether they are or not on version 1, 2, or 3.
All right, and maybe one more question, Steve, if you're ready for it. This one was very popular. What will happen with current accounts where the same person has multiple Clever IDs today?
I just want to call out that this question was asked by someone named Steve. Great name. God, I'm awful. We're actually working on finalizing details around this. It's going to be a very thorough, extremely thorough, with a migration plan and providing support for any ID changes that will take place. We know that Clever IDs remaining consistent is of absolute utmost importance for our partners. So as we're finalizing details with this is going to be something we're going to be sharing more updated details with on our technical webinar coming up and then during rollout plans in December as well. So hold tight for that. And just calling out, we're probably going to get through about two-ish more questions I think we'll have time for before we're going to wrap this up. This one for you, Emily, before it's from Han. Will district admins also be included as the new staff accounts?
Excellent question. So while all user record types like district admins or staff or teachers, for example, will have a user type, the district administrators are distinct from staff as they tend to need different permissions. So while they're all technically employees of the same district, there is a separate district administrator user type from this staff school tech lead role. And I think this last question is for you, Steve. How battle tested is API v3? Are there partners who have put a beta version of this in place?
Battle tested, love that phrasing. We've done a lot of internal testing and spoken to a number of partners around version 3 in an effort to let you know about this as early as possible in order to help you plan your 2021 roadmap, sorry. We're announcing version 3 before it's live. It will be thoroughly battle tested and ready for you before it is live, but it is still something that is being worked on right now to make sure that it's ready for the end of the year. I think we're going to stop there in terms of questions. I do want to remind everybody. I see from Josh, from Han, from Eric, there are and others, there are some questions coming through that we will make sure are followed up with directly over email to each of you after the webinar is done. But I wanted to say thank you very much to everyone, for you all for joining today and learning and keeping an eye on all new things coming across Clever. We'll be sending out the recording to all registrants, so keep an eye out for that. Just a reminder on there. Thank you for attending, and we hope you enjoyed learning more about our Q4 product updates.